The rain had been tapping the kitchen window for nearly an hour when my daughter set a little black telephone on the table between us. It looked strange there beside the kerosene lamp and the bowl of apples, shiny and smooth, in a room where almost everything had been made by hand or worn down by years of use. She was 20 years old then, baptized, old enough to answer for her own choices, and her fingers were shaking so badly that the phone clicked against the tabletop. I remember the sound more than I remember the rain. She asked me for one thing before she told me the rest. She asked me not to take what she was about to say straight to the church. I told myself I was listening. I was not listening. I was already deciding what a good Amish father was supposed to do. My name is Jonas. I am a husband, a father, and the head of a household in an old order Amish community. I share these stories because there are things about our life that can look simple from the road and become much harder once you are standing inside a family trying to do what is right. If you have ever had to choose between a rule you believed in and a person you loved, you will understand why this day has stayed with me. And if you listen to the end, I would like to know what you think a father owes his grown child when trust and duty pull in opposite directions. My daughter had always been the quiet one, not timid. There is a difference. She could carry 2 full milk pails from the barn without spilling, bargain hard over peaches at a produce stand, and tell her younger brothers to finish a chore with one look. But she kept her thoughts close. As a little girl, she would sit at the far end of the porch after supper with a book in her lap, reading until the light was nearly gone. At 16, she could mend a harness better than some boys I knew, and at 18, she was the one my wife trusted with the household accounts, when sickness kept her in bed for 3 weeks. So when she began going into town more often, I noticed, but I did not think first of trouble. She was working 3 days a week at a fabric shop owned by a Mennonite family. She brought home her pay envelope, helped with groceries, and never came home smelling of cigarettes or carrying things she could not explain. Every Thursday, she said she stayed a little later because the shop had inventory. I accepted that answer for months. The truth was that inventory had ended before supper. 2 streets over from the shop, in a back room of the public library, she had been taking evening classes, not college, not even anything that would sound large to most people, basic coursework that could help her qualify later for training as a nurse aide. She had always been the one who sat longest beside a sick neighbor. She knew how to cool a fever, how to keep a frightened child still while a cut was cleaned, and how to make an old person feel that being slow was not the same as being useless. Somewhere along the way, she had begun wondering whether that kind of work might be more than something she did when somebody needed help. She had not told us because she knew what questions would come. In our district, schooling beyond the years expected of us is not treated as a small private decision. Neither is planning a life that may take you outside the shape of the community after baptism. Every district is not the same, and I will not pretend to speak for all Amish people. I am telling you how it was where I lived and how I understood my responsibility at the time. The phone had come later. A woman from the library helped her buy a prepaid one so she could receive class updates and transportation messages. My daughter kept it wrapped in a cloth at the bottom of her work bag. For 6 months, that little phone lived under our roof without my knowledge. When she finally told me, she did not tell me because she had been caught. That matters to me now. She came to me on her own. My wife was upstairs helping one of our younger children with a cough. The boys had finished evening chores. The house was quiet except for the rain and the clock. My daughter sat across from me and laid out the whole thing in pieces. The classes, the phone, the money she had been saving, the possibility that she might spend a year working outside the community if she could find a position. She said she did not know whether she would leave for good. She did not even know whether she wanted to leave the church. What she knew was that she wanted time to understand what she was being pulled toward before everyone around her turned that uncertainty into a public matter. Then she said the one sentence I can still hear exactly. "Dad, if you tell them tonight, you will be choosing them before you even hear me." I wish I could tell you those words stopped me. They did not. At that point in my life, I had spent nearly 20 years learning to carry responsibility in a certain way. If a fence post leaned, you reset it before the whole line sagged. If a horse developed a bad hoof, you did not wait until it could no longer walk. If there was trouble in a household, a man was expected to face it early, not hide it until it grew larger. I had been taught that secrecy was dangerous because secrecy could harden a wrong choice into a separate life. I looked at the phone on the table and thought I was seeing the beginning of that separate life. What I did not understand was that my daughter was not asking me to approve everything she had done. She was asking me to be her father before I became an officer of order in my own mind. I asked a few questions, but they were not really questions. They were checks. Had anyone else known? Had she missed worship? Had she been meeting with people she had not told us about? Had money from the household been used? She answered. I remember nodding. I remember keeping my voice calm. I even remember thinking that because I was not angry, I was being fair. That is one of the hardest things for me to admit. A man can be calm and still refuse to hear somebody. After she went upstairs, I sat alone at the table for perhaps 15 minutes. The lamp hissed softly. Rainwater ran from the porch roof in a steady line. I could have gone to bed. I could have told her we would speak again in the morning with her mother. I could have asked why caring for the sick mattered so much to her. I could have asked what frightened her about the church knowing. I could have asked whether she wanted help finding a path that did not force every question to become a rebellion. Instead, I put on my coat. The minister lived a little over a mile from us. I walked because the horse had already been rubbed down and fed, and because I needed the cold air. The road was soft with mud. By the time I reached his lane, the hem of my trousers was wet almost to the knee. I remember that because I was irritated by it, as though mud on my clothes was the burden I was carrying that night. I told him what my daughter had told me. I did not exaggerate. I did not call her wicked. I did not say she had rejected us. I gave him the facts as I understood them. Secret classes, a hidden phone, plans she had not shared, and uncertainty about whether she would remain in the life she had been baptized into. He listened quietly. I went home believing I had done the clean thing. The hard thing, perhaps, but the clean thing. By the next evening, it was no longer a conversation between a father and his daughter. That is the part people outside communities like ours sometimes misunderstand. When a matter moves from the kitchen table into the hands of church leadership, the shape changes. It becomes larger than the original act. Questions arrive about obedience, honesty, baptism, example, family order, and where one choice might lead. The phone was no longer just a phone. The classes were no longer just classes. My daughter was no longer simply a young woman wondering whether she could care for sick people in a different setting. She had become, in the eyes of several adults, a question that needed an answer. There were meetings, not shouting, not a courtroom, nothing like what a dramatic story would make of it. Mostly long silences, careful words, and the pressure that comes when every person in a room knows there is a preferred answer. My daughter sat through it with her hands folded. I sat beside her at first. Later, I sat across from her. I remember noticing that change in where we were seated and feeling something inside me tighten. Nobody had ordered it. It just happened. The people asking the questions were on one side. She was on the other. I had placed myself with the questions. For several weeks, she stopped taking the classes. The phone was gone. She went to work and came home on time. To anyone watching from outside, the matter looked settled. Inside our house, almost nothing was settled. She still did her chores. She still ate with us. She still helped her mother. But the small things disappeared. She stopped sitting near me after supper. She no longer asked what I thought about a customer at the shop or a family she had heard about in town. If I was working in the shop behind the barn, she would leave something I needed on the bench instead of bringing it in and staying for a minute. Trust does not always break with a slammed door. Sometimes it leaves a house by inches. I told myself she was being stubborn. That word protected me for a while. If she was stubborn, then I did not have to consider that I had wounded her. If she was rebellious, then my pain was the cost of leadership. If she was being influenced by the world, then distance from me was proof that I had been right to act quickly. A father can use good words to hide from himself. Duty, protection, order, faithfulness. Those words are not false. I still believe in them, but a true word can be used in a false way when it keeps you from looking at what you actually did. The first crack in my certainty came about 2 months later. An older man in our district had fallen and badly injured his hip. His wife could not manage him alone. Families took turns bringing meals and helping at the house. My daughter went one afternoon with my wife. She came home later than expected, sleeves rolled to the elbow, tired enough that she barely touched supper. My wife told me afterward that our daughter had known exactly how to help move the man without causing him more pain. She had kept track of the instructions his doctor had sent home. She had shown his wife how to arrange pillows so he could sleep. Nothing grand, no miracle, just practical care. I went to the barn after supper and stood in the aisle between the stalls. One horse turned its head toward me and breathed against the boards. I thought about those classes I had treated like a doorway to disobedience. For the first time, I let myself consider that they might also have been a doorway toward something good in her. That did not erase the secrecy. It did not erase the phone. It did not answer every question about baptism or community. Life is rarely kind enough to make one side completely clean and the other completely wrong, but it did show me how little I had asked. I had been more interested in where her choice might lead than in what had made her choose it. A week later, I tried to speak with her. I will not pretend I gave some perfect apology. I did not. At first, I explained myself too much. I told her what I had feared. I told her what I had been taught. I told her that fathers are judged for what happens under their roof. All of that may have been true, but it was still me talking about me, so I stopped. I told her I had heard her request and decided against it before I had understood why she was making it. I told her that whatever I believed about the church needing to know, I should not have walked out that same night. I should have given her the dignity of another conversation. I should have included her mother before turning a family matter into a church matter. I should have made sure my daughter knew that I was not afraid of her questions. She did not forgive me in that moment. That is another thing stories often get wrong. You can say the right thing after doing the wrong thing and still live with the distance for a while. By spring, she began classes again. This time, there was no hidden phone in our house. There were still disagreements. There were still meetings. There were people who believed she was walking toward a life that would eventually take her away. I feared that too, but I had learned that fear does not give a father permission to make every decision before his grown child can speak. She did eventually leave our district for a period of time. She stayed with relatives connected to a more permissive Mennonite community and worked in a care home. I will not give details that belong to her because this is my story about what I did, not a way of taking her life and making it public again. I can say that the leaving hurt. There was an empty place at our table. My wife cried where the younger children could not see. I checked the lane more often than I needed to. For a long time, I believed the hardest part was that she had gone. It was not. The hardest part was knowing that when she first stood at a crossroads, she had come to me. She had trusted me with the truth before anyone forced it out of her, and I had treated that trust like evidence. Years have passed since that night. Our relationship did not end. That matters. We speak. We have sat at the same table many times since. There are things we understand about each other now that we did not understand then. There are also things we still do not agree about. I do not tell this story because I have decided that every church rule is wrong or that a father should keep every secret his adult child brings him. There are secrets that involve danger. There are situations where silence would make you part of real harm. There are times when another person must be brought in. But not every hidden choice is an emergency. Not every question is a rebellion. And not every act of leadership has to happen quickly. That is what I understand now. For most of my younger years, I thought decisiveness was one of the clearest signs of a strong man. A gate was open or closed. A field was ready or it was not. A rule was kept or broken. In farm work, hesitation can cost you. Weather moves, animals get loose. Machinery does not care whether you have finished thinking. People are not fields. A daughter is not a fence line you straighten before the neighbors notice. The day she begged me not to tell the church, I thought my choice was between protecting my faith and protecting my daughter. I see now that I had created that choice too quickly. I could have remained faithful to what I believed and still given her one night, one morning, one more conversation where I was only her father. I told the church anyway, and I cannot undo that. What I can do is tell the truth about what it cost. It cost her the feeling that my kitchen table was a safe place to bring uncertainty. It cost me months of pretending that obedience and trust were the same thing. It cost our family peace that might have been protected if I had been slower. and it taught me something I wish I had understood before my children became adults. When your son or daughter comes to you with something difficult, the first answer you give may matter less than whether they believe you truly heard the question. If you value stories like this from inside Amish family life, you can subscribe. I share them because the quiet parts of our life are often the parts that carry the most weight, and I would like to hear from you on this one. If your grown daughter asked you to keep something private while she figured out what to do, how long would you listen before deciding someone else needed to know?